On the couch with us today is Eric Trump, who's holding down the fort here in New York. Good to see you, Eric.
It's great to be with you.
Why didn't you make the trip?
I know I would have loved to. You know, I can't believe that reception. It was beautiful. I mean, when they were chanting Donald J. Trump, Donald J. Trump, something I'm quite frankly not used to hearing now. Normally you hear President Trump, but it was beautiful. I mean, the amount of people that they had there was just, it was an awesome sight.
Why did your dad decide to go to Poland first for this second foreign trip?
Well, isn't it kind of nice, right? I mean, sometimes these countries get overshadowed, and, you know, the Polish people are amazing. In fact, my mom's Eastern European, and I feel like I really understand kind of the spirit of those countries. I mean, they're hardworking people. They love their country, and sometimes they're overshadowed. And I think it's really nice for him to go into a country like that has had such a great bond with America, that has had such a great relationship with America, and you see the spirit out there. I mean, you see how excited people were. You see the crowds that were there, and
absolutely,
I just thought it was a really beautiful moment.
Well, before the president spoke, the First Lady Melania Trump spoke, and she said, among other things, people should live without fear. And ultimately, that's the message that your father took to Europe and the world.
To the world on so many fronts. And it was interesting. You were just talking about gas prices a little while ago, and I remember as a little kid, I'd be over in Czechoslovakia, you know, with my mother, with my grandmother, and they did live in fear. They lived in fear of not having gas, not having fuel, not being able to drive a car. I mean, a liter of gas back then was, it would, you know, I mean, it was literally, you know, what somebody made in a week. And, you know, to see us exporting fuel over to these countries, to see them, you know, energy independent for the same time, I mean, the possibilities that opens is tremendous. Yeah, my mother grew up in Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic, and my grandmother actually still lives over there. And but it's really amazing. It was amazing to see how that really strangled a country, and to see what my father's been doing by, you know, releasing energy regulations here, exporting oil. It helps them. It also helps the United States. I mean, it's a win-win for both people, and I think that's really fantastic.
And I think a lot of them are nervous because what happened in Ukraine, the carving up of Georgia, with the Russia showing their muscle, and Vladimir Putin saying, you know, I want to reassert the best I can and reconfigure the Soviet empire. What do you think the Polish people think when he hears that? They think, here we go again. You know, Germany one time, the Soviet Union the next, maybe Russia now. But instead, the president shows up and says, oh yeah, we got your back when it comes to LNG. We got your back when it comes to missile defense. We're giving you a missile defense system. So while people are pushing your dad, the president, to be tougher on Russia, he is. He's not doing with his words, he's doing with his actions. In Syria, he's doing it, and he's doing it through Europe, also with the bolster of our military presence on the border of most of these European countries.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think he's actually doing a great thing to prop up Europe. You're seeing that right there, and I think that's why he has a reaction that he has. I mean, we have, how many people were in that square? 50,000, 80,000. I mean, it was unbelievable numbers. Right. I mean, obviously people are really proud of this. And it was interesting. Eric Bolling before kind of referred to Russia as a big gas station. I mean, so much of that economy is really based on energy. And they've done a great job over the years for themselves, meaning monopolizing it, right? Where they fed the countries that they wanted energy. And those countries
set up the pipeline and made it almost, they were almost addicted to the Russian gas.
And America hurt ourselves by not exporting energy. Why would we not export energy? We are one of the great energy producers ever. There's no better drillers anywhere in the world
it's
than
probably
America.
just a backroom deal with OPEC.
Yeah, that's
Don't you read the blogs?
Yeah, that's probably
Eric, your dad said a strong Europe is a blessing to the West, and your mom from Eastern Europe, from the eastern part of Europe, and then with Melania from overseas and speaking 5 different languages. Your dad really has an understanding of what that means, more so than most Americans, because of his connections.
And he has an understanding of our allies as well. Who are the people who have always stood next to the United States of America? You know, who have always helped us further our interests, and who have we always helped further their interests? And that's why I thought going to Poland, a country that a president hasn't visited in a very long time, a country that some people might even think as off the radar, right? Was so relevant. So relevant. It was such a beautiful symbol to so many of these countries, which are, they work hard, they fight hard, they've been great friends, they've been great allies. Now, their economies might not be as large, they might not be as powerful from a military standpoint, but they have been great friends to the United States, and that should be applauded.
And you know what they have done that a lot of other nations in Europe have not done, and that is they pay at least 2% of their GDP to NATO. And the President of the United States, your father a while back, said everybody's got to do that. He did say toward the conclusion of the speech in Warsaw, he said Europe must do more to pay for world security, essentially.
Yeah, that's right. Listen, my father will be the greatest ally in the world to Europe. Europe and the United States have the same values. We have, largely the same beliefs. We are common people. We've always worked so well together. But there is, an element of abuse that we've seen throughout the years where people didn't contribute their fair share, where they relied on the United States.
And we didn't make them.
No, and that's very sad. And I think it's really nice when my father goes there and really gives somebody credit for doing the right thing. And that's what he did on the stage. Instead of scolding somebody, he really rewarded them for doing the right thing, contributing their fair share to NATO. And I think that sends a great sign to the rest of the countries who haven't been. So, and no one's made them. And that's very, very sad, to tell you the truth. And my father will. But, America shouldn't have to burden,
right,
or carry, that.
Not fair.
No, it's not fair.
So what's the pressure in the next leg? Today, the president, in a little while, will hop on Marine One, then to Air Force One, then go over to Hamburg, Germany. He'll have a one-on-one with Angela Merkel, and of course we know about the Russians on Friday. But now he's going to sit down with some allies who have been critical of him after he left because they say this America First attitude leaves us behind. Maybe we have to provide our own leadership. What do you think the approach of your dad's administration should be, and your dad in particular?
Listen, my father's been a very direct person. He wants to take care of this country. He wants to take care of Americans first. And quite frankly, that's his job as the president of the United States. We don't need to go out and we don't need to be, the police force of the entire world at the behest of the American people. We don't need to fund all these various world initiatives at the behest of, again, the American people. Everybody can contribute in their own way, and we can work together in a great way. And if somebody fails to do so, then, quite frankly, they're not being great allies.
Do you worry about us giving up a leadership role in being America first? Is that a concern?
I think we're being bigger leaders today and more powerful leaders than we've ever been before. You see my father's trip to Saudi Arabia, and you see how he was embraced. I mean, President Obama would come off Air Force One. They wouldn't even bring a staircase out to the plane. I mean, they literally wouldn't even bring a staircase. You remember when he showed up in China? Yeah. They didn't even bring a staircase out to the plane. He had to come out through the, bottom entrance of Air Force One. I mean, look at that symbol. Then look at my father when he shows up in Saudi Arabia, right? Look at the reception he got with the white horses and the parades and all the people out there. Look at the reception.
His first sword dance.
Look at the reception he just got in Poland. And
what
look
will
at
be the reception tomorrow when he meets with Vladimir Putin? Because there have been maybe some digs at Vladimir Putin today. He's not being soft on Russia right now, but when he comes face to face with him and he does have the art of the deal and he has to negotiate, what will that be like?
Well, listen, I commend my father. It's really funny. If you go back to the campaign, he always said, what, I hope we can have a great relationship with Russia. They're one of the major powers of the world. I hope we can have it. I don't know if we can, but I hope. No one wants a Cold War. No one wants adversarial relationships. I hope. And you know what? I'm going to try. And if I can get there, fantastic. And if we can't get there, okay, it is what it is, but at least we tried. And it's a very different attitude than what's happened in the past. Now, I don't know, I'm a little bit of a cynic, right? Can we have a great relationship with Russia? I don't know, but at least he's willing to try. And I think he's going to learn very quickly. So you see all these people, should he sit down with Vladimir Putin? How could two major world leaders not sit down? But I think it's also a great opportunity for them to size themselves up and pick a path. Either they get along great and we have a great relationship with two countries, or we don't, and nothing changes.
We'll never trust Vladimir Putin, but it is, maybe we can negotiate some deals, just like he's done with the leader of Poland when it comes to natural gas. He said he's a great negotiator. I wish that the prices would come down a little. I wish he would pay. We would have to pay less, or he would pay. I guess he wants them to pay less. Pay more. Excuse me. But they've negotiated a great deal. But that's what it's all about. It's negotiations. It's not about trust.
And by the way, there's no better negotiator in the world than my father. There's no tougher person in the world than my father.
Let's see how it goes tomorrow. I know in the 4 o'clock hour, I don't know if you were up, about 4 hours ago, there was a press availability with our president and the president of Poland. And one of the questions that came up was from an MSNBC reporter whether or not the president, your father, accepted the fact that Russia meddled in the election. And he said, well, I think so, but I think other countries were involved as well. But then he said, the bigger question is, why did the former president, Barack Obama, he was told by the CIA in August of last year that Russia was hacking or meddling in our election and did nothing. And he suggested, your father did, that because Obama and the Democrats figured Hillary was going to win, so they didn't want to touch anything.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how that works. And it's also really amazing how you, meaning as a station, and three of you are the only people who talk about that, how President Obama did absolutely nothing, albeit that he had confidential, classified, information briefings that were telling him that they were, apparently trying to meddle in the election. And so, I find that very, very ironic that no one wants to speak about that fact.
Why do you think
until after he left, he fanned out all this intelligence to all these different bodies throughout Washington, and that's why when your dad goes to the day after the inaugural, all of a sudden he got this huge Russia story because the president pushed it out before he left.
Yet they weren't willing to look at a candidate who wasn't a good candidate, wasn't a compelling candidate, a party that had no message, a party that is now defunct, that has no real leadership. I mean, sometimes you have to look inside yourself and, look at your shortcomings and not just blame others. And, I look at this Russia story, and I've always said this, and I've said it to all of you, and I've said it on the show a million times, and I've said it on Fox a million times and every other station. But I mean, it is an absolute hoax. It is an absolute witch hunt.
But you know, Eric, there is Trump derangement syndrome from the political left and in the mainstream media as well. And it's been fueled by the fact that there are certain people apparently still in government or aligned with the former president who are leaking stuff to the media to make your dad and his administration look bad so he can't get anything done.
Which is awful, because if you look at the amount of coverage that's been directed to that story and to all this nonsense and garbage, versus the amount of coverage directed to the fact that the Dow is at an all-time high, that the S&P 500 is at an all-time high, that the Russell 2000
What are you
is
talking about? I haven't heard that.
And the fact, I mean, just, I ask everybody to do this. Open up your 401ks. Just open up your 401ks, look at where they were on election day versus where they are now. They're up 15, 20% in many cases.
Right.
I mean, it's incredible. This is money in people's pockets. You look at jobs are all-time low. You look at housing markets. You look at so many different things. I mean, go into Home Depot. Just simple test. Go into Home Depot. Look at the lines in Home Depot, right? I mean, America, we're thriving as a nation. Everybody wants to get focused on nonsense, on garbage, on distractions.
But you know why?
Right. This is also there's a big shed sale at the Home Depot. I did notice that on Saturday. By the way, but I have to.
You were buying yourself a nice shed, right?
I was thinking about doing it, but as long as they promise to put it together, because I'm terrible like that. But I want to ask you something. Do you think the reason why your dad's lashed out at the media on some level is because in the past maybe 25 years he's gotten to know a lot of these anchors and reporters and news directors, and he's let down by the fact that he doesn't think he's getting a fair shot with them because these aren't innocuous people. You know what they're like off camera. Even you know what they're like. Is that part of the problem?
I do, Brian, because honestly, I feel the same way. I mean, there are people who I know who know that we are good people, quality people, nice people, honest people, sincere, whatever other words you can put to it. You had a relationship with them. You were friends with them. That's not to say that they shouldn't ask tough questions. I mean, that's the job. But then you look at the visceral hatred, and it's visceral. You look at the hatred. You look at their approach. You look at the negativity to everything. You look at Anderson Cooper rolling his eyes to Kellyanne Conway when she's up there, saying something. You just look at this.
But are some of them really
hatred
nice
that
to your
comes
face,
out,
and they are your friends,
right?
and then they change the narrative when they go on air?
Still, but yes, of course.
Really?
And it's sad. It's sad when you know a person to be a good person, and then you see a narrative that's depicted because some boss at one of these networks is telling them to spew a certain line of garbage. And listen, it's hurtful in a certain way, but you know what I'll say about my father? He's an incredible fighter, and he will never stop fighting them. And
You'll be that as a father, too, having a baby in 2 more months. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us.
Brian,
Great to see you.
Nancy.
Dr. Sebastian